And we are back for UFC Fight Night Moicano versus Duncan from the UFC Meta Apex. This Saturday, it is an amazing card. I've never seen anything like this ever before in my life. 12 fights, Renato Moicano versus Chris Duncan in the main event. Tabitha Ricci's in the co-main event against Vina Jandriboa. Oh! What a card! Abdul Rahman Yakhyaev in the featured fight. Bredesen Ibeto's fighting him. We've got a loaded 12-fight card from the UFC Apex. I couldn't have it any other way. We've got 5-4 Tresean Gore on the card. 12-7-2 Lando Vannata's back. He's taking on 12-8-1 Darius Flowers. Yes! Yes! UFC Apex. We've got a loaded 12 fights, folks. We're going to have a lot of fun with this card. Before we get into the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for some more UFC content and MMA content here on Greedo Plays MMA. No PFL this week, but they've got 2 cards next week, so we're back with them later on next week. On Thursday, we're going to have our best bets for this loaded card, so you're not going to want to miss that. Again, hit that subscribe button down below for more. On the main channel, Greedo Plays daily college basketball best bets, daily MLB best bets, and daily NBA best bets. So you're not going to want to miss that over there. Let's do it. First of 12 fights from the UFC Apex. We're kicking things off with a matchup in the flyweight division. Deonna Barbosa takes on Melissa Gatto. It's a phenomenal bout. I cannot wait. 2 Brazilian flyweights going at it. It's the first time we are going to see Melissa Gatto in years. Sorry, I can't keep up with, I'm enthused. I'm excited. Anyways, Deonna Barbosa versus Melissa Gatto in the first bout of the night. Should be interesting. We have not seen Melissa Gatto since May of 2024. So she didn't fight in 2025, was never booked for a bout in 2025, and now she's back here in 2026. Her last fight was a victory. She beat Tamaris Vidal by TKO in the 3rd round. Now, Tamaris Vidal in the UFC. 1-3, only beat Ramona Pasquale, went to KSW after getting cut by the UFC and didn't win there either. So, yeah, I don't really know where to put Tamaris Vidal. But that's one of Melissa Gatto's wins. She's got 3 in total in the UFC. One's against Victoria Leonardo, where she kicked Leonardo's arm and it broke, and I think Leonardo might have posted on it in the fight as well. Regardless, Melissa Gatto wins by TKO in that fight, and then she beats Sijara Eubanks. I will give Gatto credit. Her 3 wins in the promotion are all by TKO. Leonardo with the broken arm, Sijara Eubanks body kick, even though Sijara Eubanks had a 500 record after that fight with Gatto, and then the win over Tamaris Vidal. I will say Gatto works the body really well. I think that's the best part about her game. And this fight, yes, there is a clear striking advantage for Melissa Gatto. However, there's a clear grappling advantage for the Witch and, Deonna Barbosa. I don't know what other nickname I was going to use for her. There is none. The jiu-jitsu heavy fighter, though, in Deonna Barbosa will look to get this fight down as quick as possible, and Melissa Gatto will try to keep the fight standing. It's that simple. Gatto's the better striker. Deonna Barbosa is the better grappler. Who will win? I believe it's going to be the fighter who's actually been active. Deonna Barbosa recently, in 2025, fought twice, beat Diana Belbizia, who was never very good, I understand, but beats her, and then lost to Karine Silva, who, has worked her way up and down the rankings, obviously ended up losing to Macy Barber, who, oh my goodness, was on the wrong side of one of the worst knockouts I've ever seen. I mean, she got knocked out and choked out in the span of 5 seconds. That was horrible. And she was, oh my goodness, that was crazy, dude. Like, she was down the map forever. That was horrible. Anyways, Deonna Barbosa lost to Karine Silva. We thought, again, that was just going to be too much of a step up for her against Silva. She lost that fight in Chicago, but won earlier in the year again against Diana Belbizia. Barbosa's losses in the UFC are Miranda Maverick and Karine Silva. I just don't think Gatto's able to get her just with the inactivity. Now, again, if Gatto's able to stuff every takedown and if Gatto's able to keep the fight standing, yeah, she'll probably win. I just don't like the inactivity. I think Barbosa's able to get the fight down, and from there, she should be able to win it. Now, Gatto, I will say, even though she's been out for 2 years, she's only 29 years of age. So, again, she was younger when she came into the promotion. Barbosa doesn't have more experience, actually, than Gatto. I think they actually, doesn't have more experience in terms of fight-wise, but Barbosa is the older fighter. She's 33. Gatto's 29. I'm going to go with Barbosa to win the bout. I do believe her grappling and her overall, her grappling's the best part of her game. It's all dependent on how does Barbosa get Gatto down. Does she have the wrestling to bring Gatto down to the mat? I believe she will be able to, and I just don't like the inactivity out of Melissa Gatto going into this bout. I will say Gatto was competitive wrestling-wise with Cortez at parts, but obviously that's how Tracy Cortez ended up beating Melissa Gatto. Arini Lipski did take down Gatto as well, albeit didn't have much control time in that bout. I'm going to go with Barbosa to win. I believe the wrestling's going to be big out of her, but really the biggest difference maker for me is just the lack of activity out of Melissa Gatto. Give me Deani Barbosa by unanimous decision. On to our second fight of the night, we go to the middleweight division. Azamat Bekoev takes on Tresean Gore. Tresean Gore is back in the octagon with a record of 5-4. So there's that. He's taken on Azamat Bekoev, who's a minus 500 favorite, 560 favorite in this fight. Which, okay, so here's the thing. I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't be too down on Bekoev. And I never really was. He loses to Yusri Belgudi, obviously, in his third fight in the UFC. Bekoev had won his UFC debut against Zach Reese, then he beat Ryan Loder, two guys who obviously aren't the highest level guys, especially Loder, and Bekoev runs into Yusri Belgudi in his last bout in Vancouver, British Columbia. Ultimately, Belgudi wins the fight by third round TKO. Okay, guys, Belgudi might find his way to fight Israel Adesanya next. I legitimately believe that might be the next fight. Izzy went 2-0 in kickboxing against Belgudi. Belgudi obviously just beat undefeated Mansour Abdul Malik. He trains with Alex Pereira. He lives in Danbury, Connecticut with Teixeira and Pereira. I have to imagine the UFC is going to push him now that he's getting finishes in the UFC and he's not just a point style fighter like he was on the Contender Series where he didn't earn a contract in either fight. Obviously lost one. I think Belgudi's going to get Izzy next. Izzy said after the Pyfer loss, which was still unbelievable to me, he lost to Joe Pyfer. I don't know why Izzy just tried to chase a finish so desperately, but it's okay. Izzy said he wants to keep fighting. They're going to give him Yusri Belgudi next. I think so. They're going to put him against Belgudi. I don't know where they'll do that fight, but I feel like that'll be like a co-main event of a pay-per-view or a feature fight on a pay-per-view. Izzy versus Bekoev. I could 100% see it like, underneath Connor. Yeah, on International Fight Week, I think they might do that fight if Izzy wants to get back in there quickly. Anyways, Bekoev versus Gore. I don't think we should be that down on Bekoev because, okay, his only loss in the UFC's Yusri Belgudi, who is going to be in the top 15 very shortly and legitimately might have a chance to beat Adesanya. The way Izzy's fighting right now, pure kickboxing fight, it would not shock me if Yusri Belgudi beat Israel Adesanya. It wouldn't at all. But Bekoev, prior to the Belgudi loss, had won 8 fights in a row. He was the LFA champion, won it off of Dylan Budka by split decision, comes into the UFC as the LFA champion, beats Zach Reese in the first round, beats Ryan Loder in the first round, both by first round, again, TKO/KO. Now he gets Tresean Gore, and guys, I'm sorry, this is just being set up for Bekoev to get a fight back and get back in the win column. Because Bekoev, to an extent, is considered a somewhat high-level prospect for the UFC, even though he's 30 years of age. But, I mean, there was a lot of hype around him when he came into the promotion because he was the LFA champion. And he, came into the UFC and won a couple fights by first-round knockout. Again, there was hype around the guy. He was a favorite against Yusri Belgudi. He was a minus 300 favorite against him. Ultimately, he loses, but I don't think we should be that down on the ATT fighter in Bekoev. This is the perfect fight to get back in the win column. Tresean Gore, guys, offers nothing for Azamat Bekoev in this fight. Absolutely nothing. Bekoev will be able to outstrike Tresean Gore. He'll be able to out-wrestle Tresean Gore. Watch out for that guillotine out of Gore. That's how he defends takedowns, and, well, he's been pretty successful in doing so. He choked out Josh Fremd, who picked up a huge win in PFL just yesterday. And how about Impa Kasanganay at plus 190? That's what he closed at, plus 190. Impa, we told you he was beating Dalton Rosta. Impa's a problem, man. Watch out for Impa Kasanganay. People forget, man. Anyways, Tresean Gore does submit Josh Fremd with a guillotine choke, and then in his next fight, subbed Antonio Triccoli with a guillotine choke. That's how he defends takedowns. It's his power. It's a power guillotine. It's his go-to sub. Since those 2 back-to-back wins, though, by guillotine choke, he gets knocked out by Marco Tulio, and he misses weight in a fight against Adolfo Vieira, ultimately loses the bout in a fight in which he weighed in at 190 for a bout, obviously, at middleweight. So they give Gore one more shot in the UFC. He's 5-4. They give him Bekoev. If Bekoev shoots, he's going to have to be, obviously, you have to be concerned about that guillotine from Tresean Gore, even though Bekoev's at a high enough level where he's not going to get subbed with that. But at the same time, too, if we watch these last 2 fights out of Gore, he's gotten dominated. Gets dominated, completely bitched in the feet by Marco Tulio. The fight's not close. And Adolfo Vieira, even though he's not able to get a takedown, or he's only able to get 1 takedown on Tresean Gore, Vieira goes 1 for 14 on his attempts against Tresean Gore. Adolfo Vieira is out kickboxing Tresean Gore pretty easily in the second and third rounds. And I get it. Gore's concerned about the takedown. He doesn't want to get stuck on his back against such a high-level BJJ player. Sure, you still get outstruck by Adolfo Vieira on the feet. Azamat Bekoev will get this first-round knockout. Gore has nothing left in the UFC. I'm just going to be honest with you. And, what about the guillotine? What about, again, how he stuffs takedowns? Bekoev will be fine if that happens, but I don't even imagine Bekoev to shoot a takedown because of the way Gore got dominated on the feet by Marco Tulio. And I get Tulio's good. He beat UC Belgrade on the Contender Series, who beat Azamat Bekoev. Still, there's a clear striking advantage for Azamat Bekoev. He's going to chase the finish in the first round, and he should be able to get that finish. Azamat Bekoev, first round knockout victory against the 5-4 Tresean Gore. On to our third fight of the night, we move to a matchup in the bantamweight division. Hailey Cowan takes on Elise Periera. What a fun fight in the bantamweight division. Interesting one, honestly, though, because very split on the pick. And obviously that comes as a given, obviously, when you get a line like this, as Elise Periera is a slight favorite at -115. The slight dog, obviously, the American in Hailey Cowan. Both fighters looking for their first win inside the UFC octagon. This is a winner-go-home fight, essentially, for Cowan. I believe she'll get cut if she doesn't win this one. Elise Periera did lose her first fight, and again, I think she'll get a third if she doesn't win this one, but ultimately did lose her first fight in the UFC against Montserrat Rendon, or Montse Rendon is what she's going by now. Obviously, recently, Montse Rendon just got subbed by Bia Mesquita. Watch out, Mesquita is likely going to be in the top 5 soon at women's bantamweight. She's just that good, and these fighters don't know how to grapple. But anyways, Periera gets her next fight in the UFC against Hailey Cowan. Okay, how good is Periera really? Because you look at her fight on Noche in San Antonio against Montserrat Rendon, and Montse Rendon can't take her down. It is a bad, scrappy striking fight. Something that you'd expect going into the bout. If the fight's on the feet, we expect Elise Periera to win. She's young, I get it, she's only 20, but we expect her to win that kickboxing fight because that's what we've seen in the regionals. She couldn't out-kickbox Montserrat Rendon. She loses. What can I say? Montserrat Rendon wins rounds 2 and 3. After the first round, it's not great, but Elise Periera is stuffing every single takedown to the first round, and she's winning on the feet. So you're thinking, okay, she should probably win round 2 or round 3 and win the fight. No, Rendon starts to take over, and Periera's volume goes down, and Rendon's landing more and landing the harder shots. And now all of a sudden, Elise Periera she's scrambling looking to get takedowns, and she obviously doesn't, get any of them. Yikes. I will say, Hailey Cowan, although she has not won in the UFC, she's somewhat strong in there from what I have seen. And I don't think Periera is going to have a strength advantage in this one. Now, how good is Cowan really? Obviously, she's 0-2 in the UFC. Her losses are to Jamie Lynn Horth, who, is 4-2 in the UFC. I'll give her credit. And Nora Cornell, who borderline is about to get cut from the promotion. So Cowan's 0-2, got signed after a real weird fight against Claudia Lite, where she won by split decision. I don't know. It was weird that she won the fight. I thought she should have got it, but I don't know. It was a really boring fight, and they gave her a contract. Why? You can take a guess. I'll just take a guess why they signed Hailey Cowan. But now she's in the UFC, and obviously she hasn't won. She needs to win to stay on the roster here. I can see it. I can, because I know she's going to wrestle. And that's the question. Can Elise Periera stuff the takedowns? Well, she's able to stuff the takedowns in Montserrat Rendon. Rendon's not a great wrestler, but that's kind of her game, which is crazy because, again, Rendon was able to outstrike Periera. Can Cowan outstrike Periera? I think, but I'm not sure. I've never been impressed watching a Hailey Cowan fight. I'll be completely honest with you. Even the Contender Series fight, it's awful, it's boring, it's a lot of clinch work. And when Dana, got to the end of the card, and 22 was when they were, giving everyone a contract. That night, the Contender Series week 4, they gave a contract to Nazim Sadikov, who has had some great fights in the UFC so far, don't get me wrong. Hailey Cowan, Jose Johnson they gave a contract to, the anorexic 6'1" flyweight. Claudio Ribeiro, who was known for getting knocked out in the UFC, even though he's fighting well in karate combat right now. And obviously the prize was Estevam Ribovic on that entire thing. Ribovic fighting Mateusz Gamrot next week. I don't know if that goes very well for Ribovic. But anyways, right. They offered everyone a contract on that week. And 22 was just the ultimate. They were coming out of the pandemic officially. They had a bunch more cards. They had a lot of cards. They were putting 15 fights on cards in 23 and 22. So they needed a bunch of fighters. So that's why they signed Cowan. But man, she's been so unimpressive. But Elise Periera is so unimpressive too. This is a bad fight. This is an extremely low-level fight. And I wouldn't bet it at all, okay? Go bet on the Guangdong Tigers versus the Shanghai Sharks and know nothing about those teams. I'd rather bet on that over this. Chinese basketball's not on right now, I don't think, right? Wait, no, it's not. Is it? It might be. I don't know. Go bet on the Yomiuri Giants. I think that's what they are. Or go bet on Korean or Japanese baseball over this fight. right? If you want to bet on an even money fight, go bet on the Hanshin Tigers of the Japanese League, I think, the MPB, and you'll have a better time than watching this. I don't know who's going to win. I'm going to go Elise Periera, but I could easily see a world where Cowan's actually able to impose her strength, and I can see a world where Haley Cowan just clinches all fight and Periera can't do anything. Periera is so green. She's so inexperienced, but I'm going to go with the 20-year-old compared to the 34-year-old. Give me Elise Periera by decision. I think she'll win a crappy kickboxing fight. Do not bet it. Fourth fight of the night, we move on to a matchup in the lightweight division. Lando Groovy Vannata, at 34 years of age, has returned to the octagon. He has not fought in the UFC in about 3 years, and he hasn't fought in general in 3 years. He returns against the 0-2 Darius Flowers. Again, the overall records for both these fighters going into this fight: Lando Vannata 12-17-2, Darius Flowers 12-8-1. Two ugly records going into this bout, but somebody's got to win, and somebody's got to extend their tenure in the UFC. Loser leaves the promotion, essentially, is what's going on here. Loser will find their way on a PFL prelim card in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, under a Logan Storley main event. I don't know. It's a close fight for me, because, again, we have not seen Lando Groovy Vannata since April of 2023, where he lost to Daniel Zellhuber. Now, knowing what we know now to Daniel Zellhuber, it's actually kind of a bad loss. Zellhuber kind of sucks. But, okay, in all fairness to Vannata, he actually has had some really difficult fights. Since the pandemic, Vannata has fought 4 times. Yep, he's fought 4 times. Lost to Bobby Green, expected. Beat Mike Grundy in Houston at UFC 262. Lost to Charles Jordan by submission, and then went on to lose to Daniel Zellhuber in Kansas City in April of 2023. So he's back in the Apex, same location where he, lost to Bobby Green in August of 2020, where he got styled on the entire fight. Now he's fighting Darius Flowers, who has been very awful in the UFC and has 0 ground game. I mean, it is rinse and repeat every single fight for Darius Flowers. He either, one, he's bad at stuffing takedowns, and B, the guy's lost once he gets taken down. He did win on the Contender Series. He beat Arman Gogoladze. It was a Georgian guy who was very, had a good record, but hadn't beaten anybody up until the Contender Series. And Flowers just took him down and slammed him, and Gogoladze injured his shoulder. So Flowers gets the TKO win. And again, this is Contender Series 2022, where they offered everybody a contract, just like Haley Cowan. Darius Flowers was on a Contender Series show that they offered a contract to everybody on the card. Denise Gomez got a contract. In all fairness, she's been good in the UFC. Cameron Simon got a contract. Remember when he was supposed to be good? Yikes. Jesus Aguilar got a contract. He's been up and down in the UFC. And Mick Parkin got a contract. Ultimately, that's actually not that bad of a Contender Series show. Darius Flowers, though, should not have gotten a contract. Anyways, they sign him. He took a short notice bout against Jake Matthews, lost, was booked against Eric Gonzalez at one point. Flowers withdrew from the bout. Looking back at it, I can't believe I'm saying this. I kind of wish we could have seen that fight, because Eric Gonzalez was an awful UFC fighter, and I don't know if Flowers legitimately could have beaten him, because both those guys have awful ground games and awful jiu-jitsu. Anyways, Flowers lost to Matthews, got subbed, got beat by Michael Johnson. Michael Johnson keeps on winning until he runs into Drew Dober. But Johnson took down Flowers, and Flowers didn't have an escape. And Evan Elder submits him with an arm triangle choke back in July of 2024. So we haven't seen Darius Flowers in 2 years, and we haven't seen Lando Vannata in 3 years. And to make matters crazier, this fight was just made 2 weeks ago. So we're getting short notice camps for both guys who haven't fought in 2 and 3 years. And, okay, Flowers doesn't have a ground game. What is Vannata going to look like after 3 years off? Vannata he's been styled on the feet in every single fight that he's had recently, but the clear advantage for Lando here is take him down. Thing is, Lando Vannata hasn't had an aggressively, over-aggressive wrestling fight in a while in terms of that's what he's been doing output-wise. So I don't know what to expect, but if I'm Lando Vannata, the minute I get this contract, I'm looking at, I'm getting Darius Flowers, and first of all, Vannata probably didn't know who Flowers was because, I don't think a random fighter on the UFC roster knows who. I'm saying, you could pick a random fighter on the roster, or you could take, I don't know, Carlos Ulberg and ask him, random. Ask Carlos Ulberg who Darius Flowers is. He'd be like, who? Right? Ask, Ray Tsura, Darius Flowers? He'd be like, huh? So I don't think Vannata probably knew who Flowers was going into this bout. But I have to imagine the minute he got that contract and he signed it saying, I'm back for the first time in 3 years, I'm fighting a guy who can't wrestle and doesn't have a jiu-jitsu game. He's easily submittable, and he doesn't wrestle that well. On the feet, yeah, Flowers should have an advantage, but he's able to hide the fact that he's an awful grappler on the regional scene by knocking guys out and, blitzing guys. But that's maybe where you can get Vannata. Tapology's telling me that Flowers was removed from the UFC roster, which was he cut and they brought him back for this fight? I don't know. Whatever, I'm going to go Vannata. I can't, I'm taking Lano Vannata in the year of our Lord 2026. I am. Oh, wow. Lano Vannata beats Darius Flowers by decision. I think he takes him down. I think he has a lot of success down there. I could see the sub, but I'm going to go Vannata by decision to be safe. On to our next fight in the flyweight division, we go to a matchup between Alessandro Costa and Stuart Nicoll. Costa, one of the biggest favorites on this card. We're going to see an identical line, I believe, in our next fight. 2 fights from now, we're going to see an identical line. But Costa is one of the biggest favorites on the card. Actually, wait, there's a lot of big favorites in this card. I forgot. Bekoev and Yakhyaev. Oh, my goodness. Anyways, Costa is still a pretty sizable favorite at minus 410. He's going to be taking on the New Zealand, or is he Australian? Australian, in Stuart Nicoll. This is a fight that obviously Alessandro Costa is expected to win. Costa is coming off a loss to Alden Correa, but Alden Correa is pretty damn good. Alden Correa is 2-0 in the UFC. We would have liked to see him finish Luis Garul in his last fight, but there's a reason, again, Correa is undefeated so far in the promotion. He's going to keep on making his way up the rankings. Costa took that Correa fight on short notice. He was supposed to fight Edgar Chairez on that card on Noche last year in San Antonio. He gets a last-second replacement in a dangerous fighter in Correa, and Correa was winning the fight up until the finish in the 3rd round. But again, Costa's losing the bout until eventually he got knocked out or TKO'd. Costa before that beat Kevin Borjas, lost to Steve Urseg, expected, beats Jimmy Flick, loses to Amir Albazi, and wins on the Contender Series prior to that as well. So he's a 2-3 UFC fighter. He was ranked at one point going into the Correa fight, I believe, and his wins are against guys who have not been very good in the UFC, and Flick and Borjas, and his losses are guys who have all seen success in the promotion. Like, I don't think Albazi's great, but obviously, yeah, he's a top 10 guy. Urseg's right now, but still borderline top 15, and Alden Correa is going to be in the top 10 very shortly. So it's kind of hard to gauge where Costa's really at. It's because he's beat a lot of bad fighters, and he's lost only, somewhat elite level guys. I'll tell you, I don't think Stuart Nicoll's that great. We've watched Stuart Nicoll so far in the UFC, and he's been really disappointing. Now, I never had the highest hopes on the guy, but he came into the promotion after winning a lot in Australia for not Eternal, not Hex fight. He fought in beat-down promotions. So, again, I'm not the most up-to-date. I'll be honest with you with the Australian regional scene. I believe Hex and Eternal are a higher level, though, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Beatdown's been doing well. I don't know. Stuart Nicoll is winning in beatdown promotions, never wins the belt over there, but gets signed after 8 pro wins, 8-0, fights Jesus Aguilar in Australia and in his home country, and gets subbed in the 1st round. Okay, second UFC fight last year in Brazil, fights Lucas Rocha and gets completely dominated. Rocha outstrikes Nicoll 115-45 in the bout. It is one-way traffic. 30-27 obviously for Rocha, and now Nicoll is fighting for his contract in the Apex against Alessandro Costa, a fight where he is going to be overwhelmed on the feet. You look at Costa's 2 wins in the UFC, they're both by finish. So again, they're not the highest level guys, but he's finishing Jimmy Flick, he's finishing Kevin Borjas. He should finish Stuart Nicoll. We've seen a pattern too. Alessandro Costa, every finish that he has and every win that he has in the UFC is exactly 2nd round TKO. Well, I'm going to pick 2nd round TKO as well. I'm going to go Alessandro Costa, 2nd round TKO over Stuart Nicoll. I just don't know what Nicoll offers him. We saw early in the fight, and again, against Jesus Aguilar, the fight does not last very long. Early in the fight, he's not, for the 2 minutes the 1 minute the fight was on the feet, he was all right, but gets taken down. He gets a takedown and then gets guillotined. Again, he switched, tried to switch up the fight, he got subbed. The Rocha fight, he's just getting beat, man. There's some wrestling involved, but Stuart Nicoll goes 2 for 20 on takedown attempts. Oh my goodness. Alessandro Costa is a good defensive wrestler. He is. I know Alden Correa took him down twice, but trust me, I think Alden Correa is going to be real legit. Throughout the course of his UFC career, Alessandro Costa has an 83% takedown defense rate. This fight kind of reminds me of the Jimmy Flick fight, because Jimmy Flick, again, just a wrestler, jiu-jitsu guy who wants to get the fight down. I'd say Nicoll's a little more more balanced than Flick is, but not by much. And Costa had no problems with Jimmy Flick. Stuffed every takedown. Flick went 0 for 4, and Costa eventually finished him on the ground in the 2nd round. I just think Costa's probably going to win this fight at range. I think you'll probably see a trip or something, or just a clinch drag down. I think Costa will take advantage with his top pressure and eventually a TKO, because both his finishes are by TKO, but they're both on the ground against Flick and Borjas. I expect the same here. Yeah, he got knocked out by Alden Correa. Correa's legit. Stuart Nicoll felt like a forced signing on that Australia card. You know, it's very rare now you get guys signed to the UFC without fighting in the contender, especially in 2024 and 2025 and now 2026. Nicoll was an exception to that, and he has not turned out. So I'm going to go Alessandro Costa to beat Stuart Nicoll by second round TKO. I expect it to go just like his first 2 wins in the UFC, likely ground and pound finish for Costa again in the second. On to our next fight in the heavyweight division. Thomas Petersen takes on Guilherme Pat, again at 265 pounds. Guys, Thomas Petersen did not used to be this fat. I watched this guy in the Contender Series. I don't know if that was just a figment of my imagination at the time when I, been watching Thomas Petersen recently, but I was like, this guy used to not be this big. And no, it's true. Like, you watch him in the Contender Series, he was not this fat. But now here he is. He's been in the UFC, and he's just been eating good, man. The 12-12 contracts have got him right. And now he's fighting Guilherme Pat with his UFC contract on the line. He's only a slight dog here, which kind of shocks me, I'll be honest with you. Because, okay, I had a little bit of optimism about Thomas Petersen coming into the UFC. Comes in the promotion, beats former Ultimate Fighter in Chandler Cole. He beats him by key lock in the second round. Immediately gets signed to fight Jamal Pogues. Was a favorite against Jamal Pogues and lost. So as soon as that happened, okay, then all my potential at least on Petersen went away. Because Pogues was coming off loss to McParkin, which wasn't bad, but again, Pogues was never the highest level guy. The guy just lost to Ty Flores and Tough Enough. Yes, Ty Flores used to fight middleweight. Beat Jamal Pogues in a heavyweight fight for the Tough Enough heavyweight title in December. Okay, it's a horrible loss for Petersen. He then went on to beat Mo Usman. We know Mo Usman's not very good. He'll have his nights, but he's not great. He went to Saudi Arabia to fight Shamil Gaziev, got knocked out, then beat Dontel Mays, but Dontel Mays is awful. And then lost to Vitor Petrino, got dominated against Vitor Petrino, one-way traffic in Brazil last year. Petrino knocks him down twice, eventually gets the finish in the third round. Okay, where is Petersen at his best? Wrestling. By far, that is his go-to. Thomas Petersen wants to take you down, and he wants to keep the fight on the ground. That's what he did against Dontel Mays. I will say that's the most impressive fight that he's had. And this hasn't been a trend throughout Thomas Petersen's entire career. In LFA, where he was the LFA champ, right? Yeah, he was the LFA champion. He lost the belt to Waldo. Yeah, lost the belt to Waldo Cortez Acosta. But was the LFA champion. He was knocking dudes out left and right. Beat Vernon Lewis for the championship in 62 seconds via knockout. Again, that was just Petersen's thing. He got to the UFC and he's become pretty much just a wrestler because he, I guess, has realized I can't match these guys power-wise, and I'm not as quick as a striker as some of these guys are either, which is kind of unfortunate because you fight at heavyweight. But at least power-wise, though, Petersen cannot match up with these guys. Gaziev, Petrino, Jamal Pogues. It felt like Pogues was doing more damage with the strikes he was throwing at Petersen than what Petersen was doing on the flip side. So it's been the wrestling that has won Petersen's fight so far in the UFC. The Dontel Mays fight is wrestling the entire way. He beats Mo Usman with striking, but we know Muhammad Usman is not a great striker. He just kind of relies on the big power shots, and if he's not able to land, well, he's not going to win. Now here comes Guilherme Pat, who's coming off a win over Alan Fry Jr. in his UFC debut. In the Apex, last card of 2025, and the final card of the ESPN era, again, in the Apex. How good is Alan Fry? I don't know. That was a really weird signing. They signed Alan Fry after a victory over Justin Frazier, the Grizzly Bear from the UFC, the Ultimate Fighter Season 28, who fought in the championship fight against Juan Espino and lost. Yeah, I just don't know where to put Guilherme Pat. It was a confusing fight with him and Alan Fry. With Alan Fry originally. We had Fry to win because I just didn't know much about Pat. We watched him on the regional scene, but he looked good against these guys, but he was fighting random bums in the regionals who had a 2-2 record. And Fry did have the win over the Grizzly Bear, so I was like, I'm going to go with Alan Fry. I was wrong. Guilherme Pat wins the fight. He wins it by decision, and he dominates. Guilherme Pat, on the feet, is the way better fighter. Alan Fry is looking to tie up the entire fight, and he picks up a lot of control time. Alan Fry's got 8 minutes of control, yet 33 significant strikes. So, again, I appreciate damage-based scoring. And the Brazilian and Guilherme Kong Pat wins the fight. Him against Thomas Petersen, I assume Petersen's going to look to wrestle. It's just, can Guilherme Pat keep the fight up and get off of the fence, and can he strike effectively? And I came into this prediction thinking, you know what, I'm going to take Pat, but now I'm really considering taking Petersen. I'm not going to lie to you. Oh my goodness. Okay, it's all a matter if Petersen can get him down. If Petersen can out-wrestle Pat, he's going to win. The thing is, how good of a defensive wrestler is Guilherme Pat? Because we just don't know. He hasn't fought anybody. His wins on the regional scene are 1-1, a 1-1 fighter, an 0-0 fighter, a 3-1 fighter, an 0-0 fighter, and a 4-4 fighter. Was supposed to fight Anthony Graciaso on the Contender Series. He got hurt, so they just said, all right, we're going to sign you anyways against a guy who's never fought in the UFC either, in Alan Fry. Oh my goodness, this is a difficult fight for me to pick, man. Really difficult. Because I can see it's going one of two ways. Petersen wrestles him the entire way, and it's like, oh, okay, well, I guess Guillermo Pat really wasn't ready for prime time, or Petersen's just done in the UFC, and Pat starches him with the first round knockout. Pat, again, like, if you just, the eye test, Guillermo Pat should win. Oh, I hate it. I'm going to go first round knockout for Guillermo Pat, but if this fight gets out of the first, I think Petersen's going to win. Yeah, I would not bet on this either. Give me Guillermo Pat first round knockout. I can see a world there where Petersen just wrestles his way to victory. Give me the Brazilian to go to 7-0. On to our next fight. I got the graphic wrong. I typed in the wrong odds for each fighter. Should not be a surprise. Jose Delano is supposed to be the minus 410 favorite. Robert Ruchula is a plus 320 dog, okay? Ruchula is not favored over Delano. Delano's a massive favorite coming off his Contender Series victory. So again, I got the graphic wrong. I mixed it up. I apologize. I was doing this during the PFL card. And hey, that I'll say it again, that Impukasangana knockout, we're so back. Impa, man, we want the title shot. Give Impa that title shot against Venstines, but they're going to give it to Eplin because he dropped Brian Battle on his head 10 times in the span of 2 minutes. PFL card is fire. Do not get me wrong. UFC card is great. PFL card is great. Impukasangana, nothing but fireworks. Anyways, in the featherweight division, Robert Ruchula takes on Jose Delano. Delano's UFC debut. Ruchula coming off his first fight in France last year, where he did lose to William Gomez, because Gomez only fights in France. Delano coming off a win over Manuel Exposito. He won the fight by unanimous decision. It was a fight that Delano was easily expected to win. He was a minus 550 favorite going into it. Exposito came off of fighting in Combate. He was an Argentinian fighter who has shown a lot of promise. He's 25 years old, an explosive guy, throws a lot of output. Just lost, actually, his last fight in Lux to Alejandro Flores, really, who obviously has fought in PFL before. Anyways, regardless, Delano beats Exposito by unanimous decision on the Contender Series and looks good, right? Delano easily wins the bout. I don't want to say styling on him, but it is a somewhat decisive victory for one Jose Delano in that one. And now you can say styled on him. Outstruck him 146-38. And I remembered it being a beatdown. I didn't remember it being that big of a beatdown. It was one-way traffic, though. And the output out of Delano is there. This is a guy who was the LFA champion, did lose the belt, if I'm not mistaken, to Gabriel Santos, I think, or lost a tournament for the belt. Never reclaimed the LFA championship, but was a very successful fighter in LFA. He went 6-1 over there. Gets his UFC contract, and now he gets Robert Ruchula, whose nickname is the Faker. Whose idea was that? This is a former KSW champion. He was the KSW interim featherweight champion at the time of signing with the UFC, won the interim championship by third round TKO, gets signed to the UFC, and immediately fights William Gomez and loses. It's a traditional and typical William Gomez fight. All right, Gomez is barely winning on the feet. There's some wrestling involved, but Gomez barely gets the nod 2-1. It's a typical Gomez performance, and in France, he was never losing that fight. So Ruchula loses. I don't think it's the worst loss, honestly. And now he gets Delano. It's just stylistically, this fight is going to be difficult for Ruchula because of the output Delano throws. He's a very active striker. If he's not able to get that knockout, he is, again, going to put volume in your face for 15 minutes. And there's obviously a reason why Delano's a minus 415 favorite. How does Ruchula potentially win the bout? Well, he's going to have to try to take Delano down, which I do think is a difficult ask out of him. Exposito tried to take down Delano 5 times. He was only successful in 2 of those attempts. And once Delano got taken down, he was immediately able to get right back up to his feet and continue his output striking-wise. I just think it's a difficult stylistic matchup for Ruchula, who, again, has just been given a tough draw out the gates in the UFC. Again, William Gomez, again, in France, Gomez is difficult to beat with the judges. And, again, Gomez is just a typical point-style fighter. He does enough to barely win rounds. He's able to wrestle his way when he needs to. When he needs to steal around, he'll get that takedown. Difficult type of guy to fight. But now Ruchula is getting a very good fighter in Jose Delano out of the Contender Series. Again, a upper half guy that they just signed out of the Contender. It's a difficult bout, man. It really is. Because I expect Delano, again, just to be all volume against Ruchula. Yes, he'll look for knockouts, but the volume is where he's going to settle in the most. And I expect Delano to easily win the fight, honestly. It's just a matter of, can he get Ruchula out of there late, or is it going to be a decision? Again, Ruchula's fought good guys in KSW. won the case. He was the interim champion twice. Yeah, won the interim belt in 2023, then tried to unify the belts later in the year, ended up getting a soccer body kicked, TKO'd in the 4th round, ended up re-winning the interim championship. He had to defend the interim championship, my goodness, and then went to the UFC after that. Again, striking is okay. You know, the wrestling is where he's going to have to try to beat Delano. I just don't think he's able to get Delano down. I think Jose Delano wins the fight by decision. Again, the odds are wrong. Delano should be minus 410. Ruchula should be plus 320. I like the Brazilian here to get this one done. I'm going to go Jose Delano in his UFC debut to win this fight by unanimous decision. On to our next fight, staying in the featherweight division. This is not the biggest favorite on this card, believe it or not. Tommy McMillen, my goodness, is not the biggest favorite tonight against Manolo Zecchini. That would actually be Abdulrahman Yakhyaev later on the card. But Zecchini versus McMillen, obviously a fight where everyone expects the American and McMillen to win. He's 9-0 as a professional, just won on the contender series to get his contract by majority decision. He was an underdog in that bout, but again, won and earned the contract. And now he makes his UFC debut in the same venue where he won his contract in the warehouse known as the UFC Apex. As for Manolo Zecchini, one of the very few Italian fighters on the roster, it's just him and Vettori, right? I think. Zecchini, who I still think trains out of Venice, Italy, is back in the UFC after a 3-year absence, more like 2.5-year absence. Last fought in September of 2023 against Morgan Chartier. Chartier was able to finish him in the first round with body kicks. Again, got him out there in the first, and we have not seen Zecchini since. Fought in Venator, never won the title over there, and never really beat an impressive guy in Venator. Came into the UFC after back-to-back victories over a 12-12-1 fighter and a 7-3 fighter. Just 3 fights ago, he lost to a 5-0 undefeated prospect in Karmatulo Sufiev by decision. Okay. Tajikistani fighter. But Zecchini gets signed. Weird spot against Chartier. Chartier is a pretty big favorite, and obviously he takes care of business pretty quickly against Zecchini. So Zecchini's back. Again, it's a long layoff, just like we talked about at the beginning of the card with Melissa Gatto. But like Melissa Gatto, we haven't seen Zecchini in a while, and he's only 29. So it's not like he's old now. It's just, what have you been doing in the last 2.5 years to the point where you couldn't fight? And now you come back, and the UFC, obviously is punishing you for not fighting and being inactive by giving you an up-and-coming prospect who's undefeated in Tommy McMillen. It's a difficult bout, what can I say? I mean, we're not expecting much out of Zecchini in this one. In his one fight in the UFC, Morgan Chartier is dominating. Zecchini barely gets off any damage. He barely throws anything. And Chartier, again, gets him out there in the very first round. It was a big-time win for the hometown guy in that card, obviously, on that card in France back in 2023, which was the first ever card in France at the time. Second French card at the time. Obviously, the first one was Gane and Tuivasa. Anyways, Tommy McMillen, coming off a contender series victory over David Magian, it was a very back and forth fight, high volume fight. McMillen wins it. He outstrikes his opponent 113-85 in that bout. McMillen's got Mogian trying to wrestle, scrambling the entire time. McMillen stuffs 10 takedowns in that bout as his opponent goes 2 for 12, and it's an impressive striking display for Tommy McMillen in the bout. That third round is crazy. The output's insane. Outstrikes his opponent 77-42 in that third round. Absurd. Loses the first round, but ends up winning the next 2. He gets the majority decision. One judge had him losing the second, if I'm not mistaken, then gave him the 10-8 in the third. Interesting. McMillen, though, he'll be all over Zecchini in this fight. The output should be overwhelming for Manolo Zecchini. And the question is, does McMillen look to take the fight down? Because on the regional scene, when we went into that bout on the contender, we talked quite a bit about his grappling, because that's where he came up with. That's what he came up with on the regional scene. This is, by the way, Sean O'Malley's guy. They're both O'Malley's from Montana, if I'm not mistaken, right? I know he's from the Big Sky region, but both from Montana, I believe. Or is he Wyoming? No, I'm pretty sure O'Malley's Montana. They both train at the same gym, though. They're both in Peoria, Arizona, at Red Hawk Academy. McMillen, again, is a Sean O'Malley guy. UFC's obviously behind him promotionally wise, and he came up on the regional scene. Great wrestling, great submissions. He hadn't had a fight that had gone out of the first round up until the contender series fight where he won. He was originally supposed to take on Cody Law, who was a former Bellator fighter who lost to Chris Lencioni and whatnot. I don't know what's happening to Cody Law. He hasn't fought in a while. But he gets, David Monaghan on short notice and beats him and looks good. Again, the output is crazy in that third round. He will be able to completely overwhelm Zecchini here. again, when Zecchini was signed, I was a little just like, what? He hadn't beaten anybody. He had lost to some decent prospects in both Cage Warriors and Venator, and we've seen him out wrestled as well, right? I'd imagine that's where McMillen's going to go, or is he going to try to put on a show in his first UFC fight and just look to overwhelm Zecchini with strikes? That's the question, because I want to say McMillen by submission, because I think that's the easiest pathway for him in this bout. I really think so. But the strikes, I mean, if he wants to put on a show, it is there as well. I'm going to go McMillen by submission. I think if he drops Zecchini at some point, I think, he's just going to go, hopefully not like Grasso Barber, but look for this, the back take and the rear naked choke after that. Obviously, it's just an uphill climb for the Italian here, as Zecchini's a plus 700 dog. I expect the American and McMillen to win the bout. I'm going to go first round submission. I do think this is one-way traffic, and with Zecchini being out for 2.5 plus years, I can't expect much. I'm going to go with McMillen to win the fight by first round sub. On to our next fight in the bantamweight division. It is the bantamweight debut of Rafael Estevam, as he's undefeated as a pro, 14-0, but couldn't continue to make the 125-pound allowance at flyweight. So he's now making his bantamweight debut against Ethan Ewing, who obviously is now all the talk after his UFC debut on short notice as a huge underdog, beating one Malcolm Wellmaker. He is now back, second UFC fight. Obviously, the Wellmaker fight was at 45. He's now at his natural weight class at 35, and he's going to be welcoming up Estevam from 125. So interesting narrative going on here, right? Because Ewing fights at 145, looks good, beats Wellmaker, wants to go back to his natural weight class. That's expected. But now again, meeting a guy who's been fighting at 25 his entire career, but ultimately couldn't continue to make the 125-pound allowance at 5'8" tall. Because Estevam, right, 3 fights in the UFC, 2 of them he's missed weight. Weighing at 128 against Charles Johnson, which is a great win, right? I mean, a win over Charles Johnson, I mean, hell, that's, the pathway to, I guess losing to Charles Johnson is the pathway to becoming a champion, but still, beating Charles Johnson is a, spectacular victory too. Estevam wrestle heavy in that fight. Does he really win it? I guess. I don't know. I feel like if that fight happens now, maybe Charles Johnson wins. Probably does. It's one of those like, okay, damage-based scoring. Estevam takes Johnson down and holds him down, but does nothing with it. Again, Rafael Estevam is going to look to take you down at will in every single fight. It's just what he does. And that's why, again, he needed to go up to 35, because you can't let this guy keep fighting at 25, weighing at 130 pounds, which he weighed in for the Felipe Bunez fight, because, yeah, he's just going to have an advantage, and he's going to be a weight bully because, well, it's, beyond just being a weight bully weight cutting wise, he literally just weighs more than his opponents. That's where I think he's going to really struggle at 35. Because, again, that was his whole thing at 25. He'd cut a lot of weight, and if he does it, again, if you can do it fair and actually weigh in at 126, 125 pounds, sure, whatever, go be a weight bully, go dominate guys with your wrestling and apply heavy top pressure and be difficult to beat. Obviously, again, Estevam is just a pure wrestler. That's all he does. Shot 22 takedowns in his UFC debut against Charles Johnson. Landed 3, but that's all it really takes. Against Jesus Aguilar, landed 11 takedowns on 19 attempts, had 10 minutes of control. Last fight against Felipe Bunez in the Apex in August, went 5 for 9 on takedowns, had 11 minutes of control. Estevam's not looking to do damage in a fight, though. Again, he wins, but he's not a fun fighter to watch. He doesn't attack submissions. He's attacked 1 submission in his entire UFC career. He's looking to take you down and hold you down, and instead of trying to punch and do damage, he's thinking a step ahead to the point where he's thinking, okay, I'm looking to drag you back down. How do I prevent you from getting back up rather than how am I looking to finish you? Again, he has had very boring fights. They're making him go up to 35. He was supposed to fight Alan Nascimento in November. That fight was scheduled for 125. Estevam withdrew. My guess is he couldn't make the 125-pound allowance. I mean, it has to be why he withdrew, right? That fight got to fight week, and at the last second, it fell apart before the weigh-ins. I have to imagine it's because he wasn't going to make weight. So that's now why he's up at 35. The thing is, again, that's Estevam's whole thing, is that he's a weight bully. He can wrestle you. He can lay on top of you. I don't think he can do that here. Ethan Ewing, we'll see how good his takedown defense is against a guy of the caliber of Estevam, because, again, I'm not going to deny Estevam's a good wrestler. Estevam's good with his top pressure. I understand. Ewing looked good defensively against Malcolm Wellmaker. Well, Wellmaker looks to take him down a couple times. Doesn't. Ewing lands takedowns of his own. Obviously, Ewing fights a really great fight against Wellmaker. Loses the first round. I don't know why a judge scored that first for Ewing. 2 and 3, though, are Ethan Ewing rounds. Dominates on the feet, is dictating the pace, is doing more damage against Wellmaker. And again, Wellmaker, very highly touted prospect, and Ewing completely just ends that run. I think Ewing's going to beat Estevam here. I love it for Ewing. Even odds. You're probably going to see us on the Best Bets video later on the week on Thursday. Why? Estevam can't bully him. I know Estevam's still a taller fighter in this fight, but he's not going to have that crazy strength advantage and crazy size advantage anymore. He's not going to be coming into a fight against flyweights weighing 150 pounds and after he refuels and whatnot. No, he's going to, obviously, again, he might still be bigger than Ewing, but he's been so dependent his entire career on just being a weight bully and being so much bigger than his opponent, fighting at 125 and just being a heavy top pressure wrestler, where I don't think he's going to have much success against Ethan Ewing at his first fight up at 35, especially Ewing, who just fought Wellmaker at 145. I'm going to go Ewing by decision. I think he does a lot of damage on the feet. I think he keeps it standing, and that's another thing, too. Estevam can't get a takedown or can't control and hold Ewing down. He's screwed on the feet. He's not a good striker. Ewing wins the bout. I think if Ewing gets his way, he's eventually going to finish Rafael Estevam. I'm going to go third round TKO for Ethan Ewing. Eventually, he's going to find that shot. It's going to be an accumulation of damage, and eventually, Estevam's going to go away. Ethan Ewing by third round TKO, excuse me. On to our feature bout of the night. It is in the light heavyweight division as the Turkish hunter Abdul Rahman Yakhyaev takes on Brendison Ribeiro. This is the biggest favorite on the card in Yakhyaev, as Yakhyaev is minus 1,400, taking on the plus 850 dog again in the Brazilian Brendison Ribeiro. Okay. Well, I mean, the odds kind of tell you where this fight's going to go. I'm not going to hold you on this one. I'm taking Yakhyaev to win the fight. The question is, how does Yakhyaev get it done? Does he submit Brendison Ribeiro, or does he knock out Brendison Ribeiro? I'm going knockout. Whether that be a knockout on the feet or that be a takedown and TKO from there, I don't know. It could be either. Brendison Ribeiro is about done in the UFC. 2-4 as a UFC fighter. Won on the Contender Series against Bruno Lopez, who obviously yesterday just lost to Navajo Sterling. Sterling's first finish in the UFC. That fight, by the way, against Lopez could have been stopped 2 minutes before it actually was, but whatever. Sterling finally gets a finish. We had a CKB parlay, and then Izzy screwed it up, but it's okay. It's a good win, obviously, for Sterling finally getting a finish in the UFC, but that's, Bruno Lopez is who Brendison Ribeiro beat on the Contender Series. Knocked him out in the first round. Great. First fight in the UFC, fights Mingyang Zhang on an undercard in Anaheim, California. Knocked out in the first round. Then fights Magomed Gadzhiesulov in his second fight. Loses it by majority decision. It's not a great fight. It's a lot of wrestling, and Gadzhiesulov does more than Brendison Ribeiro. Okay? Was that a main card fight on an Apex card? No, okay, that was in Saudi Arabia, wasn't it? It was. Anyways, Brendison Ribeiro, last chance opportunity, gets to fight Caio Machado in Canada. That was in Edmonton, I think. Edmonton, Alberta. It was in Edmonton, Alberta. Caio Machado, a Brazilian who had moved to Canada and been training in Canada, so a hometown fight for Caio Machado, and Brendison Ribeiro wins. I don't think he won. He barely gets it. Brendison Ribeiro did more damage. Machado's, trying to overwhelm him, with volume. Ribeiro's doing more damage, but did he really win? I don't think. Okay, gets another fight in the UFC debut for Dayar Nurgoje, and Ribeiro beats him as a plus 300 dog. But knowing what we know now about Nurgoje, at the time he was like, oh wow, 10-0 fighter, wow, Ribeiro subs him. Nurgoje sucks. Even though he beat Rafael Tobias and his eye scratch that he does all the time in a fight. Damn, I did this last time I talked about Nurgoje. I actually hurt my eye. Damn, Dayar Nurgoje. Anyways, that's, again, now looking back, and I know Nurgoje's finally won a fight, but that's still not a great victory. As we saw Uran Saltabriev easily beat Nurgoje as well. Ribeiro, I don't know why they gave him Azamat Murzakanov. I believe that was somewhat short notice, and he got knocked out in the first round expectedly. And then he fights Umar C and gets finished in the first round. C, again, a 11-1 product at the time. Now, though, that he lost by first round sub to Ion Kutelaba, I don't know how much I can put into, saying, oh, well, he just lost to Umar C and he's a good prospect. Is he, though? He lost to Kutelaba in 2026. I don't know. Yeah, guys, Yakhyaev's going to win the fight. I'm just trying to think, okay, does he sub him? Does he knock him out? I'm going knockout. Brendison Ribeiro has been knocked out 5 times in his career. Umar C, TKO, Azamat Murzakanov knockout, Mingyang Zhang knockout, and then 2 fights back-to-back in 2022 where he got knocked out in Big Shot MMA and AMC Fight Nights prior to winning 2 more fights and then going to the Contender Series. How did he even get a shot in the Contender Series? He went 2-2 in his last 4, got a fight against Bruno Lopez where he's a plus 400 dog, and well, again, if you're a plus 400 dog in the Contender Series and you win, Dana's going to give you a contract, so That's how Ribeiro's in the UFC. This is the end. There's a reason why they are giving him Yakhyaev. They want him gone, and they want Yakhyaev to win one more fight before he has to fight a legitimate fighter. I don't know. I mean, because his first fight in the UFC was Rafael Corquera, who may be the worst UFC fighter of all time. As expected, Yakhyaev knocks him down, immediately jumps on the back and submits him. So that's the question. How does Yakhyaev decide to win the fight after he gets a knockdown? We know it's coming. Does he decide, okay, I'm going to submit him, or am I just going to keep punching? I'm going to guess he keeps punching, okay? Could go either way. Could go either way. But I'm going to go Abdulrahman Yakhyaev to knock out Brandon Ribeiro in the first round. Ribeiro just doesn't offer anything else to the UFC at this point in time. He's a big light heavyweight, I'll tell you that, 6'3" at the weight class, but Yakhyaev's pretty big too at 6'2". If Yakhyaev does need to wrestle, it is completely there too. This is a fairly great prospect, I will say. And he's much better than Brandon Ribeiro. Again, Yakhyaev, former Aries FC champion. I like him enough to win this fight by first round knockout as the biggest favorite on the card. I assume exact outcome, Yakhyaev first round knockout, still probably like going to be minus 200. We'll see that on our best bets video though, if it's playable on Thursday. Yakhyaev first round knockout. On to our co-main event in the strawweight division, we've got Vina Jandriboa, the former title challenger, just recently in October, I think it was October, for the strawweight title against the now champion Mackenzie Dern. She takes on Tabitha Ricci as Jandriboa looks to make her way back up the rankings to potentially get another title shot. This is going to be a case, and we see this often, of a fighter who reaches the mountaintop but ultimately falls short. They work their entire career to, try to grab that brass ring and win the world championship. They get their opportunity, they either win it or they lose it, but they're done fighting for belts and they're trying to make that ascent again, and they just fall off a cliff. Vina Jandriboa's entire career was leading up until that bout with Mackenzie Dern. She was on a 5-fight winning streak. She had beaten Angela Hill. She had beaten Marina Rodriguez. She had beaten Lupe Godinez, subbed Amanda Lemos in a main event, beaten Yan Zhao Noun in Miami, all to just get that fight against Mackenzie Dern for the championship. And she lost. Like we expected, right? We thought Mackenzie Dern was going to win, and it happened. Okay. Not a bad fight, honestly. Where is Mackenzie Dern? Can she fight again? I know they're likely waiting for Zhang Weili, but come on. Let's get a little bit of activity going. Throw Jillian Robertson in there for all I care. I don't know. Can we get a fight going? Anyways, Jandriboa loses to Dern. Expected, right? Dern's doing way more damage with the strikes. You look at the significant strike tally, it's actually somewhat competitive, right? Dern outstrikes Jandriboa 118 to 106, but the damage Dern is doing is way levels ahead of what Jandriboa is doing damage-wise with her strikes. So obviously Dern wins the bout. Jandriboa is now returning before Dern ever defends the championship, and now she's getting Tabitha Ricci. I think Jandriboa may have a jiu-jitsu advantage here, but I don't know. Ricci's not bad. She's really not. And Ricci's coming off a victory now over Amanda Ribas. Yeah, she lost to Yan Zhao Noun, but I'm going to keep pushing this narrative. I believe this is a case of a fighter who's just all of a sudden becomes washed up after they fight for the world championship. I don't want to say that's Bilal Muhammad. I don't, because I think Bilal Muhammad's going to beat Bonfim coming up. I think he's going to. We'll see. But in the case of Jandriboa, and obviously she didn't win the belt like Bilal did, but you're at the mountaintop and you fall just that short, and now you have to regroup and try to work your way back up the mountain at 37? Where's your motivation at? Do you actually think you can do it? And again, likely the peak and prime of Vina Jandriboa, again, all culminated to that fight against Mackenzie Dern where she fell short. You work your entire life to get that one fight and you lose it. And now you got to, come back and fight Tabitha Ricci, who is, 31 years of age, fighting up the rankings, coming off win over Ribas, where she finished Ribas in the second round. Yeah, she got beat, though, by Yan Zhao Noun. That fight was not close. That's concerning. I think Ricci's going to outstrike Vina Jandriboa. I think that's how this one's going to go. I don't think Jandriboa can take Ricci down. It's just a fight stylistically that really works well for Tabitha Ricci. You may say, okay, well, hold on. She got 30-27 by Yan Zhao Noun. Well, yeah, she did, and the fight wasn't close. It was in China, so a hometown fight for Yan Zhao Noun in Macau, but it was not competitive. Ricci didn't land a single strike in the first round of that bout. But think about it. That fight's not set up for Ricci to win. She wants to go to her jiu-jitsu. She wants to wrestle. But Yan Zhao Noun is just stylistically is too good of a defensive wrestler for her and was too quick, and Ricci couldn't get a hold of her. So yeah, she's going to get, Yang Xiaonan ran circles around Ricci in that bout. That's expected, again, because of how the matchup plays out. Well, you can say, well, Jandriboa beat Yang Xiaonan. Again, stylistically, though, Jandriboa can wrestle. Jandriboa's a better pure wrestler than Ricci is. 100%. So she's able to take Yang Xiaonan down in a boring fight. She's able just to lay on top of her. Ricci, again, just did not possess the striking skill to get within distance, but on top of that, didn't have the pure wrestling to beat Yang Xiaonan and take Yang Xiaonan down. But now, again, styles make fights. Jandriboa versus Ricci. I don't think Jandriboa is strong enough to take Ricci down. That's the thing. Just because Ricci couldn't take down Yang Xiaonan doesn't mean that she can't stuff takedowns out of Jandriboa. I believe the strength advantage is on the side of Tabitha Ricci. Jandriboa is the slightly bigger fighter. She's 5'3", Ricci's 5'1". Ricci is very strong, though, for being 5 foot 1 inch tall. She is. And she is a difficult fighter to take down. I think the only fighter to take her down, if I'm not mistaken, it's Jillian Robertson, I think. Yeah, Jillian Robertson's the only fighter to ever take Ricci down at 115. She fought Fiora back at 25 in her UFC debut. But Jillian Robertson had one takedown against Tabitha Ricci in Jacksonville back in 2023 as the only time anybody's ever taken Ricci down. Now, Ricci wants to wrestle you, and if you're a good striker, and if you're an advanced level striker, yeah, you'll be able to beat the shit out of Ricci on the feet. You'll just be able to jab her all night long because she can't get into, wrestling distance, and it's just, straight just striking from there. That's how Yang Xiaonan beat her. That's how Lupi Godinez beat her. The Lupi fight was not an ass beating, don't get me wrong, but that's the style on how to beat Ricci. You stay at range and you outstrike her because she can't take you down. Jandriboa is not the level of striker where she can outstrike Ricci at range. She can't do that. I think Ricci's actually better on the feet. I know, Jandriboa went back and forth Dern on the feet. And Dern's improved on the feet, don't get me wrong, but come on. Jandriboa was getting beat. The volume's there, but Dern's definitely doing way more damage. I think Ricci's winning here, guys. I think Ricci, and here's the thing, Ricci can get into wrestling range and grappling range because she's a better striker than Jandriboa, or at least competitive enough against Jandriboa. I believe, in the way the fight's going to play out, Ricci's the stronger fighter. She's going to be the more dominant fighter in this fight. That allows her to control the style of the fight and the pace of the fight and where the fight plays out. And also, by the way, there's a reason Ricci's favored. There's a reason. Maybe because Jandriboa's 37, and again, she reached the mountaintop, and now she's coming back down. Well, almost reached the mountaintop, and now she's coming down. But you look on Tapology, 80% of voters are taking Jandriboa, 20% are taking Ricci. Crazy, I know. There's a reason Ricci's favored. And when this fight was announced, I was like, oh yeah, Ricci's going to win. Because again, it just feels like a fight where veteran, long-standing fighter in the UFC finally gets that title shot, loses. They're not going to beat the contender coming up. Ricci gets it. She'll win it by decision. And now we might have to be talking about Tabitha Ricci versus Mackenzie Dern for the World Championship. I'm sure Dana would be pumped for that one. But give me Ricci by decision. She beats Jandriboa, I believe 30-27. No, this feels like a 29-28. 29-28 for Ricci. She'll win. On to the main event in the lightweight division. Renato Money Moicano takes on Chris Duncan in front of nobody in the Apex. The shame is this is going to be a fun fight. This is going to be a really good fight. It's just like the Vallejos-Emmett fight, they put it in the Apex. Like, this would be a very good featured prelim type fight on the Miami card next week. But obviously, you need something to main event the Apex, so here we are. Renato Money Moicano versus Chris Duncan. A huge opportunity for Chris Duncan to crack into the top 15 of the lightweight division. Where's Moicano exactly ranked? I will find that out right now. As for Moicano, a chance to fight off, obviously, an up-and-comer. And try to get back on track after a real disappointing loss against Beneil Dariush. Knowing what we know now about Beneil, that's an awful L. Moicano currently ranked 10th in the world. Duncan obviously currently unranked. That Dariush loss, though, for Moicano keeps on aging, worse by the day. And I understand the UFC wants to, it feels like they want to kill Beneil Dariush. Let's just be honest. That's kind of what they want to do. They gave him Benoit. He loses in 16 seconds. They book him against Manuel Torres. Manuel Torres has to withdraw. So what does Dana say? All right, kid, we got you a fight against Killian Salkid. What? Manuel Torres pulls out, so you book him against Killian Salkid in Australia. I mean, I get it. Benny takes every single fight. Like, that's obvious. Like, Dariush does not say no to any fight. He fought Arman. When no one wanted to fight Arman, still nobody wants to fight Arman, even though Ilya will beat Arman, even though I cannot wait for that fight when it inevitably happens. Unless they finally do Islam versus Ilya. But regardless, Dariush fights everybody. They're giving Killian Salkid? The problem is, okay, Dariush has lost 3 of 4. the win's Moicano. And I thought Moicano was going to win. I think a lot of people expected Moicano to win that fight. It was after his title challenge against Makhachev, obviously where he was supposed to fight Dariush the first time, but they needed someone to fill in for Arman, so it became Moicano. Moicano obviously got subbed in the first round, and so they rebooked Moicano versus Dariush for International Fight Week in Vegas. And it looks like Moicano is going to steamroll over Dariush. Early it does, right? First round, Moicano drops Dariush. It's a very clear Moicano round. You're thinking, oh, okay, well, it's just the Dariush chin is gone, which obviously it is shown it is gone in the Benoit fight, and it's going to be gone in the Sal Kid fight. Anyways, Moicano drops him in the first round. You're thinking, okay, Moicano's just going to take this fight over. All of a sudden, randomly in the second round, and I don't know if Moicano just over-pursued that finish in the first round, Moicano's gas tank completely fails him in that second round. It's a different fighter that comes off of the stool for the second against Dariush. And Dariush takes him down, and Moicano's really struggling to get back up. He can't really build back up, and Dariush is holding him. And Dariush, wins the round, obviously. In the third round, Dariush does some wrestling, but out-kickboxes Moicano too. So Dariush, who was, on the verge of getting knocked down and put down and basically ending his run in the top 15, which I guess has been extended a little bit right now, fights back, regains sense in the second round and wins the last two to beat Moicano. I hate that fight for Moicano going into a main event fight against Chris Duncan. Now, Duncan's coming off a Terrence McKinney victory, which, sure, McKinney beat Kyle Nelson yesterday. And did anyone think that fight was kind of weird between McKinney and Nelson? I don't think that kick landed. And Nelson just kind of goes down and just immediately just covers up. It was really weird. McKinney's known for the quick finishes, and he goes up there and just sprints in the first round, looks to put you away. I don't know, man. Nothing seemed like it ever landed on Nelson, but whatever. Good for McKinney. It's good for the sport. He keeps winning. I thought Nelson was going to win, but Nelson didn't come out to fight. It was really weird. And I've seen Nelson come out and try to put guys away in the first round, like the Bill Algeo fight, whatever. Anyways, Duncan's coming off a win over Terrence McKinney. Obviously, it's hard to gauge any Terrence McKinney fight because they're unlike anything else in the UFC, anything else in MMA. Because they're just 5-minute fights, rather than 15-minute fights. They're 5-minute fights. But Duncan beats McKinney in Vegas on that Marab versus Jan card to close the year for the pay-per-view cycle. And Duncan knocks down McKinney in the first round and eventually falls him to the ground and gets the Anaconda choke. Again, McKinney struggles against somewhat higher level guys, and that's what I kind of thought Kyle Nelson was, but I guess not. Duncan, obviously, though, was on a higher level than McKinney, and he easily won the bout. And we thought that was going to happen going in. Duncan was coming off a victory over Mateusz Rumbecki, who I get it, Rumbecki's never really turned out to be at least what he was, over in England, in Europe, not England, prior to his UFC run. But, man, Duncan's got some good wins. Balaji Oki obviously never turned out to be what the UFC thought he was going to be when they signed him, but he subbed Balaji Oki in the first round. Jordan Vucenic is really good. Jordan Vucenic is a really good fighter who the UFC should have never cut after losing to Guram Kutadadladze and Chris Duncan. They cut him after that. Vucenic has lost 4 fights ever. Way back in 2018, then Paul Hughes for the Cage Warriors Championship, Guram, and Chris Duncan. He's won back-to-back fights in Cage Warriors, just won last weekend in Cage Warriors. Re-signed Vucenic now. He better skip the Contender Series. Anyways, those Cage Warriors guys, man, Chadier has his moments. But, Vucenic, Paul Hughes, Mason Jones, that core of, 155-pounders at Cage Warriors, really, really good classic guys, man. I wish Hughes was in the UFC too, because right now he's just stuck, can't fight Usman again, Usman Nurmagomedov. He just pulled out of his last fight, did Paul Hughes. Oh, man, he's supposed to fight J.J. Wilson. It's not going to happen anymore, whatever. But this run from Chris Duncan, Balaji Oki, Jordan Vucenic, Mateusz Rumbecki, and now Terrence McKinney. Oddly enough, McKinney's like the third highest ranked guy out of that bunch, but still, he's winning fights. Did get subbed by Manuel Torres in the first round back in February of 2024. That's an outlier. Guy's back taken and got subbed. If you're Moicano, you're thinking, okay, I need to take this guy down. Duncan's got a good grappling base. Pure wrestling wise, though, is he great? I don't know against Moicano. I think striking wise, Duncan's gonna win. I think. But the thing is, okay, Moicano just got taken down by Beneil and held down. Beneil, though, pure wrestling wise, can still be very dangerous. So let me not undersell that. On On the feet, I think Duncan wins. I don't know where Moicano's at this point. Again, he's 36, about to be 37. Duncan looked really good on the feet against Rebecca as an underdog. Held his own, obviously, against McKinney and dropped McKinney before getting the submission. It's just pure grappling-wise, who's better? Pure jiu-jitsu, it's Moicano. But can Moicano get that fight in a position where he wants it, at least, take down, body lock, and then he's on top? Then can Moicano, get his work in? And can he get within range to do that against Chris Duncan? Because Duncan's going to be firing and Duncan's going to be looking to put him away in that first. Because, again, the guy throws very hard. On top of that, too, Moicano dropped Dariush, but everyone drops Beneil Dariush. And in that third round, Moicano's gas tank failed him, but that's where Dariush takes over on the feet, beating Moicano in a kickboxing fight. On top of that, too, it's a 5-round fight, and what the hell happened to Moicano's gas tank on/International Fight Week against Dariush? It abandoned him after the first round. Yeah, he went for it, I guess, but he had nothing in the second and third rounds against Dariush. He looked done after the first 5 minutes. So where's that at in a 5-round fight against Chris Duncan, who, hasn't been in a 5-round environment yet in the UFC, if ever. I don't think he ever has. So it's interesting, man. Also, Chris Duncan did lose to Vaislev Borshev in 2021. How the hell did that happen? He's much better, obviously, now. I mean, Duncan is a 6-1 UFC fighter, with the only loss being Manuel Torres. Is this a levels fight, and can Moicano hold off the up-and-comer who's only 4 years younger than him at 32? The answer is no. Duncan's going to win. I think I'm not saying that this is not a levels fight at all. Obviously, we thought Adesanya Piper was going to be a levels fight. It obviously wasn't. I think Duncan's going to beat Moicano. I think on the feet, Duncan holds the advantage. Moicano's not a bad striker, don't get me wrong. Duncan throws hard. He can eat punches really well. Again, the chin's great for Duncan, and he just keeps walking forward. You see that in the Mateus Rebecca fight. Yes, is Rebecca a great pure striker? Not entirely. Obviously, Rebecca has been disappointing in the UFC. I understand. But the way he's able to beat Rebecca, the way he's able to beat Terrence McKinney on the feet, drop McKinney, and then obviously submit him. And the overall grappling of Duncan makes him all right if Moicano is able to take him down. Because I think pure wrestling-wise, at least from what I've seen in Chris Duncan, pure wrestling-wise, he's not the best. He is, he's able to get taken down. The way eventually he wins in fights and avoids fights on the ground is because of the damage he does against Rebecca. He damages Rebecca so much to the point where Rebecca can't get good shots because he's struggling to get into range to get that takedown because Duncan's jabbing him to hell and Duncan's obviously bloodying up his face. That's what he's going to have to do over time against Moicano, because I think Moicano is going to be able to, likely get an upper body, like a body lock on Duncan. He's going to enter the clinch. He's going to try to take him down. I think Moicano can take Duncan down. It's just, I'm okay with Duncan, at least defensively grappling-wise, to avoid being in bad positions against Moicano. Don't get me wrong, Moicano is a great jiu-jitsu player. He's got great submissions. There's a chance he could easily just straight up beat Duncan and outclass him on the ground. I can see it because of Duncan's potential problems with the wrestling. I don't think it happens. I think Duncan is able to remain strong enough in this fight. I think, again, strength-wise, he should be right there with Moicano. I think he should be able to get back up if he does get taken down. And yes, he has a general sense of, BJJ. Obviously, compared to Moicano, where is he at? Can't say he's a better jiu-jitsu player than Moicano is, but still, I think Duncan likely ends up winning this fight on the feet. I'm going to go late second round TKO for Chris Duncan. I'm going to go late second round TKO. I think Moicano is going to look for those, look for those body locks, gonna look to clinch, gonna look to drag the fight down. He might get it at some point, but I do think Duncan's gonna be able to get back up to his feet, and that really changes the trajectory of the fight from there. I think Duncan ultimately wins it by second round TKO. I don't know where Moik's at, striking wise at 36, man. Chin, I don't know where it's at. Again, got beaten the third round striking wise against Dariush. I understand he didn't get dropped, and he actually knocked Dariush down early in the fight, but I just hate that loss. And again, where are you now coming off? And again, we talk about Vina, right? Virna Jandiroba. Moicano, different situation. Obviously, wasn't winning like 8 straight fights to get his title fight, but got a title fight. You got to the mountaintop, got a taste of the mountaintop. You're almost there to grab the brass ring, and you fall just short. Now you're sliding back down the mountain. You lose to Dariush. You're a borderline top 10 guy. Again, you were granted and gifted a title shot, but now you get Chris Duncan, who's up and comer, hungry to make his way up the rankings. I think Duncan wins it. Chris Duncan's second round knockout beats Renato Moicano. Folks, that'll do it for our UFC Fight Night Moicano versus Duncan full card predictions. If you have not yet, though, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy the video. Make sure to comment if you disagree with any of the picks. We'll be back on Thursday for our 5 best bets for this card, and then on Sunday, obviously next week, huge card from Miami: Prochazka versus Olberg, vacant light heavyweight title on the line, with Tatsuro Taira challenging for the flyweight championship against Josh Van. Folks, thank y'all for watching. I'll see you on Thursday for the best bets. Thank y'all for watching. Make sure to hit that subscribe button down below for more. And Mamba forever.